One rainy night, a blind woman takes a cab home, unaware the driver is a notorious serial killer. On the way, he hits someone, but he lies and says it was only a dog. Uneasy, she reports it to the police, but no one believes her. Days later, she hears that same voice again, and this time, he's standing right behind her. Let's begin. The movie opens inside a crowded underground club, where a breakdance competition is in full swing. But the excitement is suddenly interrupted when a woman in a police uniform pushes through the crowd. Her name is Soo-ah. Without a word, she grabs one of the dancers, Dong-hyun, her younger brother, and drags him out of the club. Outside, he struggles to break free, insisting that she has no right to interfere in his life. When she handcuffs him to her van, he shouts that they aren't even real siblings. Soo-ah glares at him and says that after 16 years of living together, they are family. In the car, Dong-hyun tries to reason with her, asking why she can't just let him dance. She scolds him for dropping out of school for dance, but he tells her she has never once watched him perform and that she doesn't understand him at all. As the argument continues, Dong-hyun reaches over to grab the car keys. Soo-ah fights to pull them back, and for a split second, neither of them sees the truck speeding toward them, and they crash into it. The van spins out of control and slams into the guardrail of a bridge. Dong-hyun is thrown forward, trapped and terrified as the vehicle tilts dangerously over the edge. He calls out to Soo-ah, but she falls to the ground. Frantic, he tries to reach for the keys. The van groans under its own weight, the metal bending and creaking as it begins to slide. Just as Dong-hyun's hand closes around the keys, the van plunges off the bridge. A truck crashes into the falling vehicle, and everything goes black. Soo-ah now lives alone in a small apartment, surrounded by the quiet hum of alarms and devices that help her navigate daily life. Ever since the accident, she has completely lost her sight. Her only companion is Wisey, her loyal guide dog. Despite her blindness, Soo-ah has learned to move around, memorizing every corner of her home and relying on sound and touch to get through each day. One morning she heads to the police station, hoping to be reinstated. Her former boss is surprised to see her. When she asks to rejoin the force, his face turns solemn. He tells her gently that her dismissal wasn't because of her blindness, but because she left during training without permission. He apologizes, saying there's nothing more he can do. Disheartened, Soo-ah leaves the station. At a crosswalk, she activates her device to guide her across the street, but it malfunctions halfway. Confused by the silence and unsure of the traffic, she steps forward and a car horn blares just inches away. Panicked, she stumbles and falls, scraping her knee as she reaches the sidewalk. Back home, she prepares dinner for Wisey, but as she pours milk in the pan, it splashes onto her hand, making her cry out in pain. The pot crashes, food spilling everywhere. Sitting helplessly on the floor, she whispers an apology to Wisey for making life hard. Wisey responds the only way she knows how, by nuzzling her softly, reminding Soo-ah she's not alone. Elsewhere in the city, another woman is trying to escape, but a man in the shadows attacks her viciously before disappearing into the night. The next morning, the news reports that the missing woman is Yoon Young, and the police have no leads. The serial killer remains at large. That afternoon, Soo-ah heads to the orphanage to visit her mom. The moment she arrives, the children run to greet her with hugs. Her foster mother welcomes her warmly. Before dinner, Soo-ah takes a slow walk through the familiar halls. In her mind, she sees a memory of her younger self, playing tag with her brother, both laughing happily. The image fades, leaving a sharp ache in her chest. Later, her mother hands her a new device. She explains that it can detect movements even when Soo-ah's cane can't, and it might help her if she ever decides to return to the academy. But she quickly notices the disappointment on Soo-ah's face. She already knows her daughter tried and failed to rejoin the force. To lift her spirits, she gives Soo-ah another gift, a ticket to a breakdance show. She explains that Dong-hyun's old teammates came by earlier and are holding a special performance to mark his 3rd death anniversary. Her mother urges her to go, saying it might bring her peace, but Soo-ah's expression darkens. She shakes her head and refuses. "I can't go," she says. "He died because of me." Her mother insists it was just an accident, but Soo-ah's voice breaks as she replies, "No, it was my fault." Before leaving the orphanage, Soo-ah's mother insists on driving her home since it's already late and raining heavily. But Soo-ah shakes her head and says, "Day and night are the same to me now." Her mother hesitates, then watches worriedly as Soo-ah walks away with her cane. At the nearby taxi stand, Soo-ah calls for a cab. The dispatcher apologizes, explaining that because of the storm, it could take hours before a driver arrives. One by one, the people around her leave until she's the only one left, standing alone in the cold rain. Finally, after what feels like forever, a car pulls up beside her. Relieved, Soo-ah gets in and settles into the back seat. Despite her blindness, her sharp senses quickly start to notice details. She recognizes the softness of the seat, realizing it's a deluxe taxi. She even picks up the faint smell of disinfectant and mentions that the last passenger must have been someone from a hospital. When she tries to roll down the window to let the smell out, rain splashes in instead. Then, the driver hands her a canned coffee with some tissues, offering to open it for her, but Sua refuses. But he insists, and just as he reaches forward, his car hits something. The vehicle jerks violently. Startled, Sua asks what he hit, but the driver calmly replies, "It was just a dog." Sua frowns, sensing something is wrong. The impact was far too strong. She insists on calling the police. Suddenly, the driver snatches her phone and throws it on the ground, his voice turning cold as he orders her to get back inside. Just then, another car approaches. In a rush, the driver shoves Sua out of the way and speeds off into the darkness. Moments later, Sua finds herself at the police station, with her worried mother by her side. She insists that what happened wasn't an accident, that she clearly heard a woman scream right after the impact. She pleads with the officers to investigate the scene immediately. But before anyone can take her seriously, a drunk man at the station causes a commotion. The officers are distracted, and Sua's words are drowned out in the chaos, and she quietly leaves the station. Meanwhile, at a dimly lit basement, the wounded woman is lying on a table. She's still alive, gasping for breath, begging him to help her. But when her eyes wander to the side, she freezes in terror. Another woman's lifeless body lies just a few feet away. The next morning, Sua is in her small bathroom, gently bathing Wisey. Just then, the doorbell rings. 2 police officers stand outside. One of them explains that a young woman has been reported missing near the site of last night's accident. They ask Sua to come with them to the station for questioning. At the precinct, the case is assigned to Detective Cho. When the captain hands him the file, he sighs and mutters that it'll be pointless taking a statement from someone who can't even see. Still, he follows orders and calls Sua into the interview room. After noting down her basic information, he tells her she can go home. But Sua doesn't move. Instead, she calmly tells him, "You should ask me the same questions you'd ask anyone else. Don't treat me differently, because I can't see." Detective Cho raises an eyebrow and asks her to describe the driver. Without hesitation, Sua begins. He's in his early to mid-40s, about 176 centimeters tall, with a sturdy build, and he wears a watch on his right wrist, which means he is left-handed. Detective Cho smirks, thinking she's bluffing, until she adds, "Just like how you're in your 30s with a lean build." Cho freezes. She's right. For the first time, he looks at her with respect. He sits back and says, "All right, tell me everything you remember." She explains that the driver must have lied about hitting a dog to cover his tracks. The sound of the collision, the crack in the window, and the faint scream she heard afterward, all of it points to a hit-and-run involving a human victim. She also recalls that the car smelled like disinfectant, so perhaps the passenger before her was picked up from the hospital. Intrigued, Detective Cho decides to follow up. He heads to the airport taxi stand, hoping to talk to other drivers who might know the suspect. But before he can gather much, he receives a call from a young delivery rider named G-Sub. The man claims to have seen the accident and says he came forward after seeing the police's appeal for witnesses. When they meet, G-Sub insists that the vehicle wasn't a taxi at all, but a foreign car. Sua shakes her head, saying that she was inside the cab and can easily tell the difference between a normal car and a deluxe taxi. G-Sub insists again, growing defensive. Then Sua says, "If you really saw the accident, why didn't you report it that night?" she asks. He hesitates, then replies, "I saw the driver put the woman in the back seat. I thought he was taking her to the hospital." Her expression hardens. "I was in the back seat," she says. "The woman was in the trunk." The room falls silent. Then, Sua asks coldly, "Are you here because you want to help, or because of the reward money?" G-Sub looks away, avoiding her question. Detective Cho grabs G-Sub and tells him to leave. When Sua steps outside, she unexpectedly runs into Mi-hyun, a woman she once trained with at the police academy 3 years ago. Later, Detective Chu drives Sua home. He tells her sincerely, "You should finish your studies and become a police officer. You've got the instincts for it." Sua smiles faintly, but shakes her head. "I'm blind. How can a blind person be an officer?" Cho then replies, "Being a cop isn't about what you can see. It's about what's in here." He taps his chest. For the first time in years, Sua feels a spark of hope stir inside her. That night, Sua sits quietly in her living room. She runs her fingers across an old case she hasn't opened in years, her academy books. Slowly, she unlocks it and pulls out a stack of worn manuals and study notes. She traces each line carefully with her fingertips, reading through the sections about accident reconstruction and hit-and-run procedures. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a young woman named Young-Yan stumbles out of a crowded nightclub, her steps unsteady from alcohol. She steps into the cold night air to smoke, when a car slowly pulls up beside her. She boards it down without thinking, unaware that the man behind the wheel is the same killer. The next morning, Detective Cho continues his investigation. He spends the day visiting different car repair shops, asking if any deluxe taxis came in recently, with front-end damage, but all of the mechanics shake their heads. Later, he hands a recorder to Soo-ah. He explains that he has recorded the voices of several deluxe taxi drivers for her to listen to, hoping she might recognize the killer's voice. Soo-ah listens carefully, one recording after another, but after hours of listening, nothing matches. That same night, the killer drives past the intersection where the accident occurred. His cold eyes notice something unusual, a man defacing the police appeal poster. It's Jae-sub, the delivery rider, scribbling over the notice, angrily writing that the car wasn't a taxi. The killer watches him for a long moment, then silently follows. Meanwhile, on their drive back, Detective Cho rolls down his window, letting the rain-cooled air in. Suddenly, Soo-ah stiffens. "I've heard this sound before," he explains to her. "That's because this car is a hatchback. That rattling sound only happens in hatchbacks." Then she mentions that she heard the same sound inside the deluxe cab. But Detective Cho tells her that there are no deluxe hatchback taxis in Seoul, and in that instant, the truth hits them both. What she thought was a taxi wasn't a taxi at all. Jae-sub was right. Meanwhile, the killer is trailing Jae-sub through the quiet back streets. He has just finished his shift and is complaining to his friend over the phone that he didn't manage to get the eyewitness reward after all. Behind Jae-sub, the killer listens carefully. From the short phone call, he now knows that Jae-sub was the only person who saw the accident that night. Jae-sub senses footsteps and turns around sharply. The street is empty, but something feels wrong. His instincts kick in, and he starts to run. The killer follows, his pace calm but relentless. Jae-sub darts through side streets. For a moment it looks like he's lost his pursuer. But just as he turns to leave, a brick smashes into the side of his head. He collapses instantly, blood trickling down his temple. The killer steps closer, ready to finish the job, but before he can strike again, a door creaks open. A woman steps out of her house, holding a trash bag. She freezes when she spots the bloodied man on the ground. The killer slips into the shadows, just as she screams and rushes to call the police. Meanwhile, Detective Cho and Soo-ah are already nearby, heading toward Jae-sub's neighborhood after failing to contact him. When they notice the flashing lights, Cho stops the car and gets out to investigate while Soo-ah waits inside. Cho's eyes widen when he sees the unconscious man on the ambulance stretcher. "It's Jae-sub," he mutters. Unbeknownst to them, the killer stands beside the car, looking at Soo-ah. Now he knows she is the one who triggered the investigation. Later that night at the hospital, Jae-sub lies in bed with a bandage wrapped around his head. The doctor explains that he's lucky that he sustained only minor injuries. Then Detective Cho wonders, if it wasn't really a deluxe taxi, why would the driver let you in? Soo-ah frowns, thinking back. "He gave me coffee that night, and kept insisting that I drink it." Cho's eyes narrow, knowing that there is more to this case than it appears. The next day, Cho meets with his captain to report his suspicions. He explains that the accident wasn't just a hit and run, it was deliberate and possibly connected to a series of missing women. But the captain isn't convinced. He tells Cho to stop jumping to conclusions and gather more concrete evidence. Cho leaves the office frustrated but determined. Meanwhile, Soo-ah stays at the hospital to take care of Jae-sub. Seeing him lying there with his head bandaged reminds her of her own brother, and guilt tightens in her chest. The next morning, Jae-sub finally wakes up. Cho wastes no time and begins questioning him. "Did you offend anyone recently?" Jae-sub scoffs weakly. "I don't even know why someone hit me. Maybe you should ask yourself why you didn't believe me when I tried to help before." Soo-ah lowers her head, feeling the weight of his accusation. Later, as they leave the hospital, she turns to Cho and says quietly, "Maybe it's better if I stop helping with the investigation. I already made one mistake." Cho tries to convince her, telling her that she did well so far, but Soo-ah does not want to cause the investigation to go south. That night, Soo-ah returns home. She turns on her laptop and plays an old video, one recorded years ago on the day she was accepted into the police university. On the screen, her mother is smiling proudly, her brother cheering. Then her phone rings. She answers and freezes when she hears the voice. "Is Jae-sub doing well in the hospital?" Her pulse quickens. She doesn't need to ask who it is the killer. "Turn yourself in, otherwise you will have to leave in fear for the rest of your life." He laughs, a low, chilling sound that echoes in her ear. "You can't see me," he says mockingly, "but I am watching you." Soo-ah's breath catches. Her hand trembles as she pulls the curtain shut. "This isn't the first time, is it?" she demands. His voice turns cold. "If you and that delivery boy keep your mouth shut, maybe this will be the last one. But if you keep digging, you won't like what happens next." The line goes dead. Heart racing, Soo-ah immediately tries to call Detective Cho, but he doesn't pick up. Panic sets in. She hurriedly grabs her bag and heads to the hospital with Wisey. At the hospital, Ji-sub is laughing with two of his friends. The mood is light until the door bursts open. Soo-ah rushes in. "Stay here," she pleads. "Don't leave the ward until Detective Cho arrives, please." Ji-sub frowns, confused. "Why? You're not safe," she insists. "He's coming for you." But Ji-sub doesn't take her seriously and leaves with his friends. Soo-ah stands frozen in the hallway, and once again the killer is watching her. Moments later, Ji-sub is at the subway platform when he spots Soo-ah boarding a train across from him. His heart sinks when he notices a familiar figure, the man who attacked him, stepping onto the same carriage behind her. He panics. Without thinking, he calls her. "Put your earpiece on," he whispers urgently. "Don't react. Just listen. The man sitting right in front of you is the killer." Soo-ah freezes. He tells her to get off at the next station, and he will meet her there. The doors open. She steps off, but the killer follows. She continues the call with Ji-sub, and just then a passerby appears, so he tells her to scream for help. But before she can, a cold blade presses against her back. "Just walk quietly," he hisses. Soo-ah's breathing quickens, but she forces herself to stay calm. With her free hand, she reaches into her bag and grips the pepper spray. Then, in one sudden motion, she sprays it behind her and shouts, "Wisey, run!" Wisey bolts forward. Over the earpiece, Ji-sub yells directions, guiding her through the station via the video call. "Left. There's an exit to your left." She runs, but then the leash comes off and she falls hard. The killer's footsteps echo behind her, growing closer. She scrambles up and finds the elevator, slamming the button. The doors begin to close, but just before they do, a hand wedges through. The killer forces the doors open. He raises a syringe filled with a strange clear liquid into Soo-ah and she collapses. But then, Wisey charges at him, teeth sinking into the man's leg. The killer screams in pain and slashes wildly with his knife. The brave dog refuses to let go until the elevator doors finally close and begin to rise. When the elevator opens on the upper floor, a group of passers-by rushes in to help her. Soo-ah lies in a hospital room. Beside her bed stand Detective Cho and Ji-sub, both looking worried. The doctor enters and tells Detective Cho that the strange substance the suspect tried to inject was propofol. The doctor also shares that it is a controlled anesthetic and only hospitals are authorized to use it. Detective Cho suddenly remembers Soo-ah's words of how the car smelled faintly of disinfectant, like a hospital. The pieces click together in his mind. The killer must work at a hospital. Just then Soo-ah stirs awake, and she calls out weakly, "Wisey, where's Wisey?" The room falls silent. Cho exchanges a painful glance with Ji-sub. Then Detective Cho places something in Soo-ah's hand, Wisey's collar, and breaks to her the heartbreaking truth: Wisey is gone. Her voice breaks as she cries out. The loyal dog who had been her eyes, her comfort, is now gone too. The next day the entire police department shifts its focus to the case. Meanwhile, Ji-sub provides a crucial clue. He identifies the car model used by the killer, a black Peugeot. But amid the flurry of activity, Soo-ah remains withdrawn. She sits quietly in the corner of the station, her expression empty. Ji-sub keeps glancing at her, guilt written all over his face. Then Detective Cho tells Ji-sub to stay with Soo-ah until they catch the suspect. He also assigns a uniformed officer to accompany them for extra safety. Later, Soo-ah and Ji-sub arrive at the orphanage. Her mother greets them warmly and tells Ji-sub to stay there, insisting he treat it like his own home. As they talk, Ji-sub notices the small motion detection device that her mom bought for Soo-ah. Please convince her to use this. It might keep her safe. Then a volunteer takes Ji-sub to the basement room where he will stay temporarily. It is the room where Soo-ah's late brother, Dong-hyun, once lived. The room is filled with old photographs of Soo-ah and Dong-hyun. He looks around quietly, realizing how much she had lost. For the first time, Ji-sub truly understands the pain behind Soo-ah's silence. The search for the Peugeot intensifies. Every available officer is on the case, combing through repair records and parking databases to find the car tied to the killer. After searching for hours, Detective Cho finally arrives at the clinic, but it is closed. Then he makes his way to the basement parking area. Then he sees it, a black Peugeot, parked in the corner. Just as he approaches it, footsteps sound behind him. A man walks towards the car and Detective Cho asks, "Does this car belong to you?" The man gestures toward another car, pressing his key fob for the car beside the Peugeot. But Detective Cho continues questioning him if he knows the owner of the Peugeot. Then Cho notices something. The man is left-handed. And on the corner of the windscreen, the phone number of the car owner, same digits as the killer. Cho's instincts scream danger. He subtly presses the button on his pen recorder, then steps closer. "Can I see your ID, sir?" The man pauses, his expression hardening for just a second before takes out his ID. But he pretends to drop it. When Cho crouches to pick it up, everything happens in an instant. The man lunges, slamming the car door against Cho. A violent struggle erupts in the narrow space. Cho manages to grab his handcuffs and snaps one onto the killer's wrist, but the killer only smirks. With his free hand, he pulls out a pocket knife and drives it deep into Cho's neck. The detective gasps, staggering backward. He tries to fight back, but his strength fades and life drained from his eyes. At the orphanage, the children and Sua's mom are preparing to go out for the breakdance performance. Before leaving, she turns to Ji-sub. "Stay with Sua's while I'm out," she says kindly. "We'll be back after the show." Ji-sub nods. Once they leave, the house feels quiet again. He sits beside Sua. "I'm sorry," he says softly. "If I listened to you that night, maybe Wisey would still be alive." Sua shakes her head. "It's all right. I've already lost so many people, my parents, my brother, and now Wisey. It's almost like loss follows me." Her words hang heavy in the air. Wanting to change the mood, Ji-sub tries to cheer her up by telling her a joke. For the first time in days, Sua lets out a small laugh. Just then, Ji-sub's phone vibrates. It's a message from Detective Cho, asking where they are. Ji-sub quickly replies, "We're at the orphanage." He doesn't realize the message didn't come from Cho. It came from the killer. Back at the police station, the investigation finally breaks open. The team identifies the suspect, Myung-jin, a gynecologist specializing in abortions at a private clinic. His record is disturbing. He was imprisoned years ago for assaulting patients, recently released. Detectives rush to trace his whereabouts, but by then Myung-jin is already on the move. At the orphanage, night falls. Myung-jin's car rolls silently to a stop outside the gate. The lone officer assigned to guard the place barely has time to react before the killer ambushes him. A muffled struggle, and the guard collapses. Inside, a song starts playing from the old stereo in the living room. Sua hears it and calls out, "Ji-sub, can you turn that down?" She begins walking toward the music. The faint click of a lighter flickers in the darkness. She stops instantly. "Detective Cho?" she calls out. "Is that you?" Her heart pounds as the silence stretches. Then Ji-sub rushes out from the basement, his face pale. "Sua, that's him. It's the killer." Before she can react, Myung-jin steps out of the shadows. Ji-sub lunges at him, shouting, "Call the police." Sua turns to grab the landline, but the wire has been cut. She runs to her room, fumbling for her phone which has fallen to the floor. Back at the hallway, Ji-sub collapses, stabbed in the side. Sua quickly snatches a screwdriver from her desk and kills the lights, plunging the house into darkness. Now only the sound of footsteps fills the air. The killer moves slowly, opening each door one by one. She crouches in the corner, counting the creaks of the floorboards, using her hearing to stay one step ahead. When he enters the next room, she slips out, triggering the alarm in her bathroom. The sudden noise fills the house, and she uses the chaos to lock him inside the bathroom. Panting, she rushes downstairs, searching frantically until she finds Ji-sub lying in the hallway, his clothes soaked with blood. She drags him into the room, and using the first aid kit, she tries to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, the police arrive at Myung-jin's house. They break down the front door and sweep through the rooms. The smell of decay hits them. Flashlights cut through the darkness, and what they see freezes everyone in place. They spot Young-yun, who is badly wounded and traumatized, and see several other bodies lie lifeless on cold metal tables. Then one officer rushes in with an update. "Sir, we tracked the suspect's last location to the hospital, but we are unable to locate him after. Also, both Detective Cho and the officer stationed at the orphanage isn't responding either." The captain's expression hardens. "Everyone, move, head to the orphanage." Back at the orphanage, chaos erupts. The killer loads his pistol and fires at the door's lock, shattering it open. Sua quickly hides Gim-sub under the table, then clutching a screwdriver, "Stay back," she warns, her voice trembling. But Myung-jin sneers at her. "Someone like you shouldn't try so hard to live," and then grabs her by the throat. Sua gasps, struggling for air, but summoning all her strength, she pushes him off and slams him to the ground. In the struggle, she grabs her lighter and threatens him that if he does anything, she will set the place on fire. Then she demands he hands her the handcuff key. He throws the key somewhere across the room, far out of reach. Then he swings the bat at her. It connects with her arm, and the lighter slips from her hand. The flame hits the spilled alcohol on the floor, and within seconds, fire erupts. The room explodes into heat and Myung-jin's sleeve ignites. He screams as flames crawl up his body, his shirt and face burning. Sua stumbles toward the exit. She manages to lock him inside the burning room, but only for a moment. Seconds later, he bursts out, half his face charred, eyes blazing with fury. He knocks her to the ground, calling her useless as she fades into unconsciousness. He stands over her, preparing to assault her, but before he can, Ji-sub charges from behind, and Myung-jin collapses. Ji-sub drops to his knees beside Sua, shaking her awake. When she opens her eyes and realizes he's alive, tears spill down her face. Now with the handcuff keys in hand, they start toward the exit. but before they can reach the door, the killer lunges again. All three crash to the floor in a tangled heap. Sua's head hits the ground, and the world goes black. In her mind, she sees a memory, her brother Dong-hyun, trapped inside the van years ago, screaming for help as the vehicle dangled off the bridge. She remembers her helplessness, the fear, the sound of metal groaning. But this time, she refuses to let Ji-sub die. She forces herself up and, using a brick nearby, she slams it into the car, triggering the car's alarm. The sound blares through the air, disorienting the killer. As he turns toward her, she activates the motion detector her mom bought. The faint beeping helps her track his movement. He raises his knife, but she's faster. She swings the brick with all her strength, striking him squarely in the head. The killer falls backward, motionless. Ji-sub exhales in relief, and they both look at each other, glad that the ordeal is finally over. Moments later, the police arrive, pulling them both to safety. Officers surround the fallen killer and cuff him as paramedics rush to the wounded. So-ah finally graduates from the police academy, standing proud in her uniform as her mother and Ji-sub cheer for her. Though she cannot see the world, she now faces it with courage and hope. For the first time in years, So-ah smiles, knowing she has truly found her way.